Welcome to Joe College Radio. I'm Miles King, joined by my co-host, Jordan Lenderman. How are you doing this week, Jordan?
I'm doing well. I've got a midterm, another test, and then the paper due this week, so I'll be busy, but I'm excited to get a little break for some college football right now.
Yeah. Good luck on that interpretation of theater midterm you got tomorrow.
It's theater appreciation, Miles.
Theater appreciation.
Yeah, it's much more rigorous than interpretation of theater. That class is a joke.
Yeah.
But theater appreciation.
As everybody knows.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to a game that turned into a joke. Alabama versus Arkansas.
Wow. Okay. That's a good way to start it off.
That's the segue.
Yeah, thanks for that one. Nice sucker punch there. Well, yeah, it was loud. Razorback fans from all around came in. It was a packed house. We had recruits and their families from the 20-yard line on one side wrapping around the entire length of the end zone. So we had a lot of people there. I heard a lot of good things about the visits. So that's good for future purposes, which we might be in dire need of based on the game. But yeah, like I said, it was loud. My throat hurt a lot from yelling at that game. There's a lot of stuff that went down. Austin Allen was pressured on 69% of his drop back passes, which it's never good whenever the defensive line is in your backfield more than your offensive line is protecting you. So, but he still managed to throw for 400 yards, just a shade over 50% completion, but I don't blame him. He honestly had a great game based on the protection that we were giving him. He had 3 touchdowns and also 3 interceptions, all by the same player, Marlon Humphrey. He was all over the field in that game. I didn't expect their secondary to do a whole lot, but he really was in the right place at the right time the whole game. And just to move on to a broader view of the game, and one thing that the NCAA has struggled with a lot this year, the referees. It's not as bad as we've seen before, and it definitely didn't cost the Hogs the game, but
there was no untimed downs, which resulted in
it wasn't as bad as it's been, like I said, and yeah, it didn't cost us the game, or you can't say it cost us the game. I guess there are probably some rabid fans that would make that argument, but it's probably a stretch to say that. But the referees had a lot of questionable calls, and it seemed like any time we had momentum going for us, the referees would blow a call. For example, there was a forward pass that was called a fumble and returned for a touchdown, which obviously that's a big momentum swing. It was 7-21 at that point, and it became 7-28. And if we had gone down and punched it in, it could have been 14-21, a totally different ball game. And whenever it was 7-21, the last time we had the ball, we were driving down the field. Or excuse me, whenever it was 7-28, the next time we got the ball after that bad call, we were driving down the field. We were in the red zone, and I don't even know what phantom holding the referee was looking at, but somehow they managed to call a holding on our right tackle, and I've seen the play multiple times from multiple angles, and Deshaun Hand, he did a spin move. He bull rushed the inside and did a spin move to the outside and just fell down. I guess based on how dominant the defensive line was, they didn't think that our offensive line could knock any of their players down.
Could actually block an Alabama player. They
probably just assumed that we held on that play, and it clearly wasn't holding. And so Bielema was absolutely outraged. We ended up getting a field goal out of it, so it was 28-10, but that's a lot different. Still a 3-score game. And Bielema went out to the middle of the field, and he was trying to get the attention of the referee that made the call, and that referee would not pay attention. All the other referees had to come to the middle of the field and pull him away, and he was heard. The ESPN crew actually caught the audio of it, and he said, "That was a touchdown. You took away a touchdown. That was 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 a touchdown." And he was just adamantly pleading the case of our players because it was well-deserved, and it could have been a momentum swing for us, potentially, or at least gotten us within 2 scores. But they weren't having any of it, and they actually threw an unsportsmanlike conduct flag on Bielema, which is something you don't see a whole lot, especially from a guy that is very respectful to pretty much everyone. He's a really nice guy. So yeah, they took away a touchdown from us, and then later in the game, Nick Saban did a very similar thing and received no penalty, which was absolutely absurd. I was shocked that he got that kind of pass, but in the end, they were too powerful up front for us. Our offensive line is missing a lot of guys from last year. We are really feeling the pressure now that we lost all those veterans, and they just haven't meshed as a unit yet. But as the season's moving along, I think we'll improve little by little. Hopefully we can withstand some of these defensive fronts. We happen to play the two best in the SEC first, so I'm hoping it's the worst that it gets at this point. One thing I will say, though, because I was very mad at Nick Saban just for the fact that he beat our team very handily, and then, of course, he didn't get that personal foul, unsportsmanlike conduct called on him. But I was very happy whenever I saw after the game, our center, after last week's game, his father died. He's from Minnesota. And so Bielema actually flew back with him after that game just to be with the family and to give him some support. And Saban, whenever he was in college, actually had the same thing happen to him. His dad passed away. I believe they were both from heart attacks. And after the game, Saban went up to Frank Ragnow, our center, and he consoled him. And he was just, it was a very grown-up move from Saban. It's something a lot of people wouldn't expect from him, but he really proved to me that he understands that the players are bigger than the game. And that's something I didn't think he believed going into this game.
Yeah, that's definitely a class act by both Saban and Bielema there, especially you're showing a lot of devotion to your players and showing they actually mean something whenever you go to the funeral the next day. Speaking of Bielema, how secure do you think his job is? Is his seat getting any warmer or not? Because FFOTP Scott King pointed this out on Twitter, but after the game, some fan ran down to the field and was yelling obscenities at Brett Bielema about his record and how he should be fired. Is that the consensus among many Arkansas fans, or is that just one disgruntled fan? What's your feeling of the situation?
Well, not only is it just one disgruntled fan, it's one intoxicated disgruntled fan. That was part of the reason why he got taken away and actually arrested. He was an ag business professor at the University of Arkansas. And he couldn't keep his cool. And whenever you come to a game intoxicated, of course you don't have all your wits about you. And so he made a poor mistake, and that's not representative of the Arkansas fan base whatsoever. Throughout the game, I found myself upset just with our players and the lack of intensity that they had at times, but never at the coaching staff. They seemed to have the players in positions to make plays, but we just weren't ready to play with the big boys, I guess.
So nobody's really, the seat's not warm at all for Bielema.
I can't imagine. If it is, then those fans are delusional, but the majority of the fan base believes in what Bielema's doing, and this is one of the best starts we've had under Bielema. And our two losses are to the number 1 team and the number 6 team in the country. So, yeah, I mean, you can expect to lose games like that. It's not good that it was in a little bit of a blowout fashion. I wouldn't say blowout, but it wasn't as contested as it should have been. But his seat should be as cool as the other side of the pillow, if you ask me.
As cool as the other side of the pillow. Well, moving on to another game, which was cool as the other side of the pillow. At least the Oshkosh offense was as cool as the other side of the pillow for much of the game, as they stalled and let themselves get down 31-14 against the Iowa State Cyclones at one point. Were you surprised whenever you saw this score, whenever you saw the way it was going down, Jordan?
Actually, yeah, I remember looking up at the Jumbotron, and this was near the end of our game whenever I saw it. By the way, I'd like to add this about the Arkansas game. We had a decent amount of fans stay for the whole game. And there's actually an old man that said that that's the best he's ever seen the fans in the student section stay throughout the whole game. So I'd like to add that note. The fans really respect and love Razorback football. But getting back to this game, it was near the end of our game, and I saw the score pop up on the Jumbotron, and I thought that I misread it, or that I just wasn't able to see the screen clearly. I saw 38-31 for the final, and I thought that there's no way that could be the case. Maybe 38-21, but sure enough, it was. And I actually didn't get to watch this game, but what were you thinking as you watched that game?
I was honestly just completely stunned for a large portion of the game. It was really just kind of shocking to see how it played out, because you know, at the very worst, Iowa State should just be keeping it close with you. I mean, never should they be 3 possessions ahead of you at any point. But you got to give credit to OSU. They did come alive, but for whenever they scored in the second quarter, with about 2 minutes left in the third quarter, they had 6 or 7 offensive possessions, and only 1 or 2 of them weren't a 3-and-out. It was really a inept performance for for over a full quarter by the offense, and the defense wasn't doing them any favors as they were giving up points. It was just it was just shocking to watch, and the energy had just been sucked out of the stadium. There was no energy, like the Cyclones had silenced the crowd, but then Trey Flowers makes a strip. The Cowboys get a turnover, quickly score, and then the comeback was on. And the crowd who got up for them, that re-energized the stadium a lot. And I think that really pushed the Cowboys onto victory in the end. But it was looking like it was going to be just an insipid performance. Wow. Until they forced those turnovers at the end. But you got to give Gundy and the Cowboys credit for keeping that mental toughness and keep fighting even when it would have been easy to pack it in.
Definitely, and I mean, they've got a game next week that is looking tougher after that TCU close call, and you have Kansas at home.
Yeah, not next week. We got a bye week.
Or you have a bye. It's your next game. I misspoke.
Yes, the week after that.
But yeah, that's it. Could be an upset for sure if they come out flat like they did.
We could be on upset first if we play the way we did, for sure. And Kansas, we're not going to go in depth on this game, but Kansas missed 3 field goals. I think I saw in that game, and they lost by 1 point.
Right.
And they lost one they missed one at the very end that would have taken the lead. So really, Kansas should have won that game. They just found a way to lose in the end. But yeah, that was a very shocking result. And the Cowboys have had kind of lackluster performances in Lawrence the past few times they've been up there. So it's imperative that they go and get a fast start and don't start slow like they did in this game, or they could be in for some trouble.
Yeah, I think right now you're predicted as a 94% assured victory. So maybe it's a little bit closer than that. Definitely the favorite, but it could be closer than the experts think.
Yes, sir. Hopefully the Cowboys take them seriously. I think they will. It's a much-needed week of rest and recuperation. We've had some guys banged up. Our starting safety, Jordan Stearns, had to sit out this game with an injury. Mike Gundy and his staff don't disclose injuries, so we don't know what that was, but hopefully he gets rested up. He's really the anchor of that defense, so I think they'll stiffen back up once he comes back.
Let's hope so.
Let's move on to one of the most anticipated games in Big 12 country every year, the Red River rivalry. This year, OU takes down Texas 45-40, and what you'd expect to be a closer game than it should have been, but Texas played them tough. But in the end, the Sooners were too much for them to handle. Who's had a more disappointing season to start so far, Jordan? Is it the Sooners or the Longhorns?
That's a tough thing to say. Well, first of all, this was the highest scoring Red River rivalry game of all time, which is just insane, just to think about the history between these two teams. But based on expectations coming into the season, it's hard to say that OU is not the team that's underperformed, and they've lost to two proven teams. But Texas didn't have national championship implications, and OU did coming into the season. Texas clearly is not the better team, but compared to expectations, I'd have to say OU has underperformed more. And speaking on the game I'd have to say that these have to be two of the worst defenses in the Big 12. Just constantly giving up points. The secondaries are getting torched. I remember watching at one point in the game, they were just trading long balls the whole game. The defenses were abysmal, and P. Ryan and D.D. Westbrook were able to exploit Texas's defense and lead the Oklahoma offense down the field almost at will at certain points in the game.
Yeah, and of course, this week, Charlie Strong demoted defensive coordinator Vance Bedford.
Bad move.
From his spot, and he took over the defense, but it's really hard to say that there was any improvement at all as OU gained 672 yards of offense. Pretty bad showing by the defense if he was expecting it to get any better. So that's not helping his cause to keep his job for next year. Really, if I wasn't able to watch this game because I was waiting to get into the OSU game. But if you're just looking at it, you'd think that OU should have won this handily. But there you see the 4 turnovers there, and you got to give credit to Texas for staying in the game and making it a close one. But OU just almost looked like they were trying to shoot themselves in the foot like they did last week against TCU by letting them come back and barely holding them off at the end.
Yeah, and to speak on your point about Charlie Strong, this was definitely not the week for him to take over the defensive coordinator position. I said it before, and I'll say it again. If you're going to take over at some point, you probably don't want to take over against an offense that's proven that it can move the ball very efficiently last year, and then they've done a decent job so far this year, and especially in this game with 672 yards. He's got to be on the hot seat. I don't know if Texas wants to fire him mid-season, but he's not performed to expectations at all. And with his track record at Louisville, you would think he'd be able to get over the 6-6 hump or a 7-5 hump and maybe work his way into a 9-3 season at some point. But it doesn't look like that's going to be the case anytime soon.
No, it's a very disappointing tenure so far from him. They've come out and said they're not going to make any coaching changes mid-season, but after a 2-3 start, unless they just go on an incredible run and win the rest of their games by wide margins, it's tough to see him getting an invitation back to coach this team again next year.
And you'd have to say that you're not going to make any mid-season adjustments because you want your coach thinking about the game. You don't want him thinking about whether his job's at stake or not. So I don't know how much I would look into what the ADs are saying, what all of the administration is saying. I think you just have to take common sense and say that, I mean, I might let him go mid-season if the season's already pretty much over. Like, why not? Why not let an interim coach see what he can do, like Ed O?
Yeah, Coach O didn't get an opportunity to show off this week as the Florida LSU game was postponed, but you might as well take a chance. It'd seem like if you're planning on getting rid of him, you might as well get rid of him now. But unless the Longhorns drastically improve, I don't see Charlie Strong sticking around for much longer in Austin. Let's move on to a great game this week, a double overtime thriller where the Tennessee Volunteers' luck finally ran out as they were defeated 45-38 in College Station. The Aggies took this one. Really exciting game, and it looked like the Volunteer magic of this season was going to continue as they forced overtime, but Texas A&M was able to put a stop to it in the end.
Yeah, I've never been happier to see Texas A&M win a game, and I can't stand these Tennessee fans who've gotten big heads and they thought that they could beat the big boys in the SEC West. That's not happening. Next week they're going to get beat by Alabama too. They may be able to pull out a little bit of magic and keep it close, but I don't see them pulling out a victory there. But like you said, A&M won, and they should have won by a lot. They let Tennessee back in the game. They should have won in regulation as well, but I mean, Tennessee had 7 turnovers.
Yeah, that's an insane number. The fact that they even were able to force it to overtime and a double overtime speaks volumes of their their luck in this game.
It's their luck, and it's the lack of education of the A&M players. You have to know and understand game time situations. For example, Travion Williams, the running back for Texas A&M, he tried to run for a touchdown at the very end of the game. There's 1:49 left. He broke away. He'd run probably 60 yards at this point, and he got chased down, and just as he was about to cross the end zone, a Tennessee player dove and punched the ball out of the back of the end zone. If he had fallen at any point past the first down marker, they'd take a knee 3 times and win the game. And so it really never should have gone to overtime in the first place.
Yeah, and that kind of falls on the coaches there. You're not coaching your players up to know what they're supposed to do in that situation. Because, of course, if the coaches don't say anything, he sees that open path to the end zone. But, of course, it's on him for not protecting the ball either, because that's just egregious that you would fumble right before the goal line, which continues the trend of course, he didn't drop the ball, but continues the trend of players fumbling before the goal line this year.
It's a stupid trend.
Yes, undoubtedly, but it'll be interesting to see how much that continues. But the Aggies win this week. That sets them up with a huge matchup with Bama in 2 weeks' time, whereas the Volunteers have to limp into next week and face Bama, and it probably looks like the Crimson Tide will be lighting up the cigars in the locker room after another win over the Volunteers this year again. Because, of course, the tradition of the winning team lighting cigars in the locker room in that rivalry. Now on to the biggest upset of the week by far. Navy takes down the Houston Cougars 46-40. This was just a shocking game. Nobody would have expected Navy to have any chance in this game, but they come out on top. Ken Niumatalolo's men pull out the upset victory. What are your thoughts, Jordan?
I mean, it was just a huge game from the Navy quarterback, 3 for 5, as absolutely incredible, incredibly efficient throughout the whole game. Of course, the story for Navy is never the passing game. It's the rushing yards, and really they didn't have a whole lot based on the score. 306 yards, but the turnovers were very key and very timely for the Navy defense, and they were able to steal one from Houston, who looked like they were going to cruise all the way until they played Louisville Cardinals. Yeah,
and this is what happens when you let your guard down, when you go in thinking you're automatically going to win. This is how you get upset, and Navy, they shouldn't have overlooked this game because Navy every year is a solid squad. Like I said before, Ken Niumatalolo, he's a quality coach. He's going to have them ready to play every week. So you got to be disappointed if you're a Houston Cougars fan or Todd Herman for not coaching the guys up this week. But this definitely puts Houston out of the playoff conversation. In my opinion, I don't think you can especially not being a Power 5 team, you can't get into the playoff with one loss. And also, there's another interesting point. It probably ends Louisville's bid to make the playoff, because if Houston had remained undefeated and Louisville's only loss was that close one to Clemson, and they go in and handily beat Houston, they could make a case for getting in the playoff, even though they lost to Clemson if Clemson ended up winning out. But now their strength of schedule drops a little bit with that, and it doesn't look quite as impressive just facing a one-loss team. So Houston could have effectively knocked out Louisville and themselves from the playoff contention this week with this loss.
I don't think that's the case. I don't think this had much of an effect at all on Louisville, to be honest, since they're in a Power 5 conference. They play good teams week in, week out. Everyone knows Houston's still a good team, and really the deciding factor for the playoff committee could be that they have the Heisman Trophy winner on their team when the end of the year rolls around. And that's big with the eye test, which I was watching an interview, and someone that was sitting in on a mock college football playoff selection from 2010 said that the eye test was a huge indicator of who they put in the playoff, margin of victory, and seeing how dominant a team is throughout the game. So I don't think that hurt Louisville's chances whatsoever.
Yeah, of course, it's just speculation, but it is an interesting point. We'll have to monitor that as the season goes on. But they had to have been very disappointed to see this result. And either way, whether it affects them or not, because it does decrease their strength of schedule.
Absolutely.
Moving on to another installation of a classic rivalry between Florida State and Miami. This one, there have been lots of famous games, wide right, wide left. This one could be blocked left. All right, I'm not sure. I'm sure there's a better way to coin that. But
batted down.
Yes, the Florida State was up 20-13. Miami drives down the field in the last minute and a half of the game, scores a touchdown to tie it up, and the ensuing extra point is blocked by Florida State, winning them the ball game. An egregious error, a lapse of concentration by Miami special teams as they allow this to get blocked. This got to be one of the worst ways to lose a game.
Absolutely. And I know this personally because 2 years ago, Arkansas lost to Alabama by missing an extra point and also by fumbling out of the back of the end zone. So both of the trends of this year harmed us in that game. But looking at this game, it was Lee Corso probably predicted this game correctly because he always picks just the most ridiculous way for teams to win. But he does it in a serious way. He'll say a field goal and a safety or a touchdown with a blocked extra point. Well, we have our touchdown and a blocked extra point here. So he may be a genius in disguise. It's hard to say. I doubt it based on his record of late. But getting back to the game, I didn't expect it to be this low scoring with how Florida State's defense has played so far. I thought that they were going to put up some points. I thought that Florida State would put up a good amount of points, and I picked them to win this game. But I was scared whenever it was a low-scoring game because usually the better defense is the one that benefits in a low-scoring game.
Yeah, Miami jumped out to a 13-0 lead, and Florida State needed a field goal with 6 seconds left in the half to even get on the board. Looked like the Canes were going to shut out the Noles there. But give credit to Florida State for staying tough after being dominated in the first half, and for coming back and winning this game. It takes a lot of heart, a lot of determination to come back after that, and it's got to be really disappointing for the Canes fans. You could have seen that after the game as they were throwing objects onto the field in typical Miami fan fashion.
Yep.
But that is a caveat to this. It looks like Mark Richt may have Miami back, which means Miami fans are back, which makes for entertaining television.
Absolutely. Hopefully they're not as bad as they were in the 80s. Fan-wise. Of course, the team is fantastic, but...
Yes. Now on to this game really has no national significance at all, but we're just including it just because of how absurd it was. Probably shouldn't even been played. But this is North Carolina State versus Notre Dame. North Carolina State wins 10-3, and the victory comes on a blocked punt returned for a touchdown by North Carolina State. Like I said earlier, this game shouldn't have been played at all because of Hurricane Matthew. It was raining sideways. It was pouring down. The water was collecting on the field in some places. Every time a player would get tackled, he'd slide an additional 5 yards on the field just because of how wet everything was. But did you get a chance to watch any of these highlights?
Actually, I got to watch a little bit of the game, but like you said, and I'll do my best Forrest Gump impression, there was all kinds of rain, raining sideways, big fat rain. There's all kinds of rain, Miles. And there's nothing that they could do, of course, because Hurricane Matthew is a little bit bigger than the stadium and then this team could handle. One thing that I thought was ridiculous, and this is a highlight. I actually didn't see this part of the game, but this is a highlight after I left the Wesley Foundation tailgate. NC State tried a flea flicker in this game. Why in the world would you? So you hand it off. That's a good move in a game where it's pouring and ball security is an issue. But then you decide you're going to pitch it back to the quarterback, and then you're going to have him throw the ball. Two of the worst things to do in a raining situation is absolutely ridiculous, but somehow they came out with the win. Let me say one thing, though. Notre Dame if they had James McWeeny, would never have lost this game. He had 5 shutouts in his history. He's a special coach in the rain. He loved the rain. He loved walks in the rain, especially on the beach. All of those beaches that are in Notre Dame, because we know there are so many.
Yeah, he had his oceanfront property in Indiana.
Yes.
In South Bend. But you're right. This was really pathetic. I think they should bring back James McWeeny. He would have never let him play like this. But on a serious note, Brian Kelly, he's got to be done.
He needs to be out of there. And personally, I would love for him to stay just to see Notre Dame continue to be awful. It's great to watch that. But for the sake of their program, they need somebody to come in and remedy that situation. And it'd be interesting. I don't see this happening. It was just a thought that popped in my head as I was speaking. But it'd be interesting if Charlie Strong somehow got that. With him having history, being a good coach, maybe he just didn't have what it takes in Texas. He obviously doesn't have the recruiting ties in South Bend or anywhere in the Indiana area. But you never know. Maybe someone's going to see some value in him and he could redeem himself at another big school. I don't expect it, but
that is a good point. There are going to be, on that subject, there are going to be a lot of premier jobs open this summer. You've got Texas, USC, Notre Dame. We expect Coach O to be let go at the end of the season. We'd hope not, because everybody loves Coach O. But more than likely, the LSU job will also be open. There are going to be a lot of top jobs up for grabs.
Florida International, you can't forget that.
Florida International. Oh goodness, I apologize, listeners. That was an egregious mistake by me.
Ron Turner is probably going to be upset when he hears this pod.
Yes, I apologize, Ron Turner. Ron Turner could be in the mix. I think Ron Turner to USC. That's gaining steam recently.
I've heard.
According to my sources.
Yep, that's been the talk of the town.
Yeah, but the coaching carousel this summer should be more interesting than ever, with all the goings and firings and hirings. But that concludes this episode of Joe College Radio, the review of last week. Be sure to be on the lookout for part 2, where we preview next week, and we will include our listener mail in there as well. But thank you guys for listening. We appreciate every single one of you. Jordan, what do you got to say?
I would like to reiterate what Miles said. We love you guys. We appreciate everything that you guys are doing for us, spreading the word, and just listening to our podcast. We enjoy doing it, and we hope that you guys are loving a little taste of football in the middle of the week. So thanks again, guys.
Yep, thank you. Be on the lookout for part 2, and thanks for listening.